All right, we're Wednesday, February 22nd, and we have a short little agenda today, starting with Joe from Microsoft, who has some updates he's been working on for the GitHub Actions support. And I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to you, Joe. Great, we can see your screen now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, set up unmute. Yeah, so over the last couple of releases, we at Microsoft have been using the this Aquifer GitHub action to run some of the AQAvit verification tests against some of our SKUs. And so we're at a point where we want to be able to use this GitHub action to run across all of our SKUs. And so this will allow us to essentially automate our AQAvit verification process while kind of giving some transparency on I guess how we achieve verification for the adoption marketplace. So I just want to go through and get some feedback from the team here on some of the changes that we've made to kind of just get us off the ground a little bit. I think these changes are still very much a rough 1.0 version for us, so I'm pretty confident we'll have some good feedback here. But the first changes that we've made here are to the parallel test file. One of the things that we want to be able to do is use some of our internal self-hosted pools for some of our SKUs, primarily because this gives us a little bit more control over the agents that we use, and will help mitigate some of the timeouts that we've seen throughout some of our testing with this GitHub action. And so there's this very rough bit of code here that will just help us choose between which type of agent that we like to use. What's missing here is if we're not going to self-host, right? Then this would require to be updated. So that's one point of feedback from the team is whether or not self-hosting would be supported upstream or maybe some other considerations there. So that's one thing. And then when setting up the environment, we had to set a little bit of code here to download some of our binaries. I think our idea on our end that we'd be able to run some of these AQAvit tests during a release. And so I think our perspective was once our binaries become public or not public, available, we can take off these tests. Though there's a concern on if we're going to provide download links to making sure that those are properly sanitized. Since if we're running this, there's potential for any sort of links to get logged to the output. And so we've come up with this. I'm not very happy about it. I don't think it's the greatest solution, and I think there would be a better way to do this. But maybe there's a conversation there when a vendor would be running these tests using a GitHub action that's out in the public, would it be best to wait till after binaries are made available to the public, or how would we best handle that situation? And so those are the biggest changes to, I think, get us off the ground. The action still uses hard-coded number of machines, which I think we would want to make that a little bit more dynamic based on how many machines or agents would be running some of these tests. And then that would get rid of some of the hard-coded aspects here as well. And one other thing that we added was a parallel test for Docker containers. The driving force for this was to run some Alpine tests, which we run in containers. So we we went ahead and added this. And one of the concerns here, I think, would be, you'd still need secrets set on a repo to be able to log into. Well, this would be logging into a private repository, or if you wanted to use like a public repository, you wouldn't necessarily need this either. So it's kind of a highlight of changes that we made that I think we could probably use some feedback on, maybe some next steps.
Yeah, great. Thanks for giving those. So there's kind of the three topic areas that you mentioned, and what I really liked to see was those are the same types of things we had to address in a Jenkins environment. So I think it's absolutely valid to bring those forward. So I do think that the reality would be that we need to offer a way for people to have their own pools. As you had mentioned, what if a vendor wants to use their own pools versus the, whatever open available machines happen to be there. So yeah, I think we will need to describe a way that people can do that, a standard way to identify we're going to use our own pools. And that might just be a matter of agreeing on a naming strategy for the supported set of platforms that would be in your pool, right?
Yeah.
The next one, and anyone else, please interrupt me, but I'm pretty sure some of the team is recognizing the SDK resource piece now. So what I understand you're describing is you have a workflow that's built your JDK binary, and now you want to pass it over to this Aquifer piece. So in Jenkins world, what we did was have a parameter called SDK resource that it can be upstream, which means it's in another part of your build or workflow that you're going to hand an artifact over, or it can be the nightly and releases, which means I want to automatically serve up the latest nightly or the latest release from the Adoptium API, or it can be customized, which is what Aquifer originally said, is you pass in a customized, you pass in a URL where I just know where to pick up this zip file or tar.gzip file, depending. So I think we want to support kind of those three cases, and I call them three because the first one is grab me the binary from an upstream. Second is grab me from the Adoptium API through either nightly or releases, and then grab me from a customized URL wherever you're serving the thing up from.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen, but I actually recently, I guess I have a fork of Aquifer where I've recently passed in that customized URL as a parameter. I'm not sure if that's, I don't think I've actually pushed that back up, but let's see what you're doing here. For your case where you're trying to take it from another part of a build.
I think like what we're doing is like we do have the customized SDK URL here.
Yeah.
But I think what we're maybe thinking about is once throughout a release, once we've built binaries, kicking off Aquifer or AQAvit testing right as those binaries are available. But if we pass that as an input parameter itself, whatever link that we have in there might be would be available via like a GitHub action log. And so I think our concern is making sure that bit of information is properly sanitized, just because if we have binaries that are just built and then maybe not properly maybe not have passed TCK or JTReg or any of the other tests, we wouldn't want those out in the wild just yet. One of maybe the mitigations we've thought about is if we're going to do this in the public, maybe we'd have to wait post-release, or where our binaries are then public and then uses, or coming up with a different solution where we can maybe leverage some sort of storage environment. But I think moving that way, it might kind of couple us to a solution, or
Right. I'm also wondering if that kind of check if this is the right binary that got tested and AQAvit verified in the TAP files, assuming you're using TKG, which I
Yep.
think you are with the aquifer here, we should be pushing the SHAs of all the stuff that's in use, plus the Java version output, plus the release file information. So one should be able to, at the end of this run, have an audit that says, this is the exact JDK binary that was tested, and cross-reference it with, I presume, the Java version and release information of the sanitized variant that you have.
okay.
I'm wondering if that might be satisfying, because then you don't have to wait until post-publish to be able to produce these. But
Okay.
I'm just throwing that out there as a potential. I'm currently, well, I think Lan actually created a job in Jenkins that lets us go through all the TAP files and verify, but it has a shell script that actually could be re-employed for your use. Essentially, you just unpack your TAP files into a directory, run this script, and it's going to go through everything to give you a score to where did everything pass. If it didn't, concern, you have to rerun these. But also that's the place where we were thinking to put the rest of this audit. Check, is this the version you really intended to test and verify? So there's an opportunity to add more checks in there.
Okay.
And I think it could be, I think it should be environmental agnostic. It shouldn't matter if you run it here or you run it in Jenkins. It's just looking at the result files at the end. So here at the end, I think you upload those artifacts in one place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So at that point where either just before they get uploaded or just after, there can be an audit task or something here that helps you verify, well, is this really the thing that we care about? And then therefore are these the artifacts we care about?
Okay.
Right. I think it's before upload will be
Yeah,
best,
makes
and
sense.
just trigger the script and validate, list all the AQAvit required tab file and validate the result. I guess that's the best.
And I think to Joe's question, also validate that the Java version information and the release information
Mhm.
are the thing that you actually care about. Because at some point when you say, how do we know that this is the sanitized binary? How are you knowing now that it is?
Mhm.
Is it a manual process of checking, or is there another check you have in your other?
We manually go through the tab files here.
Yeah. Yeah. So you benefit from having this script as well, I think. Okay, cool. Just wanted to understand if there's, but also like at the moment when you decide you're going to publish to the marketplace, there is still a manual step, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, well, no, right. It doesn't need to be manual. I think we're trying to figure out how to automate it. And now both in Jenkins environments and to remove as much of the manual step as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We,
No, this is great though. So I think there was a third thing. What was the third one? So we have the Your own pool of machines, yes, I think that's what everyone will need or want to be able to support that. So mainly that looks to me like possibly just standardizing a way to identify machine types or something, but we can look more closely at change that there. There's the make sure I can pass let's have an agreement on how we pass binaries under test to Aquifer, not just
Yeah.
as a customized SDK URL, but also as an upstream or as an artifact from another step. And then am I missing the third one that you brought up? Sorry.
I had that one.
It might just be how to sanitize the big one we just talked about, which is how to sanitize or how to know. And does that imply you'd have to do this process after things were public?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think, as Van suggested here, just before the upload artifact step, we should have a verify artifacts step, and that that audit includes just checking that the contents of the TAP files look same.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the TAP files contain the SHAs and version info of the thing you expect.
Yeah.
And that they all match, because what if I have 20 TAP files there, but 2 of them are these oddball ones that don't seem to have the same version information, and where did those come from? So it's a way to alert and audit yourself. Yeah, good.
Yep.
Cool. This is awesome though. So this is, you've taken a fork of the Aquifer, and for people who didn't know or remember what Aquifer is, it's the Aqua for you, Aqua for me, Aqua for everybody repository that and you've got it great as
we have it under the Microsoft.
yeah,
org,
great.
right?
Yeah. And I had never pushed our Aquifer one. I think I put a copy in our AQAvit GitHub org, but that GitHub org isn't really in use. We decided at the project to put everything under the Adoptium GitHub org, so I hadn't pushed it over there. If I need to push an Aquifer, which I think we'll eventually want to do as a repository into Eclipse Foundation. The reason I've delayed is when you do that, you lose all admin rights. So, but I think ultimately we'll want to move it in under the official AQAvit project in Eclipse Foundation. But we can work through, before we do that, it might make sense for us to work through all the rest of the stuff, get it the way we want it, because then we'll have more permissions and rights to do what we need to do for testing.
For sure. Okay.
Great, that's awesome though. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Other questions for Joe? Other comments on this one? And I think once we get it, it looks like you're close to having something that we could kind of share more broadly and get more feedback. One of the next steps we could do is ask other vendors who are pushing to the marketplace for their input. I know the Red Hat team will be very keen to see some of this. I think it simplifies what they need to do.
Okay.
So we can broaden the feedback beyond just this meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, awesome. Anything else from anyone before we move to next items? No? If not, thanks, Joe. Yeah, maybe we can throw a discussion issue into Aqua tests or over in wherever you want to discuss, like working out that audit piece. We could put one in Aqua tests to talk about how you could do the step before uploading artifacts there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll take that action and create one, and then we can just put some notes. Cool. We don't have much time left, but that's okay, because I only wanted to briefly visit our project plan, take a look at what is remaining in 1Q, and also to say that we probably will have a few more people joining and helping at the project in the next few weeks. So let me just fire up a screen share as well. So we're gonna take a look at this briefly, and then I wanted to mention, because we are having more people joining the project and helping out, I'm starting to actively make some documentation updates, which were sorely lacking. So first, let me go over here and take a look. This is really a very high level plan for 1Q, and you can see we actually have a AQAvit tab for that. I haven't really properly updated the current iteration that we're working on. Ends on Monday. We're just doing 2-week iterations here. And because we're not all one company working on this project, I don't intend to project manage everybody. I think everyone has their own requirements and schedules. But what I would ask is, if you're willing to make sure that whatever it is you're working at directly at the project is reflected at least on a plan. It doesn't have to be reflected in an iteration. It can have no iteration. For example, this particular one that I've self-assigned, I don't have it on an iteration, but once I actually get it moved into in progress, I would put it into the current iteration. So all I really wanted to do here was check in with folks from the AQAvit side to find out if there's something you're working on that isn't reflected here. So say I was working on an AQAvit, some other AQAvit test here. Oops. Sorry. Would I actually need to add it to the plan and change the status? So if you're actually taking on an item in this list, please, you know, if you've assigned yourself and you're working on it, please go here and add it to the 1Q plan. And if you're having trouble with that, just message me so we can properly reflect what we're accomplishing in the time frame. 1 minute left. So I just wanted to say the last item was this documentation updates. You might have remembered this particular wiki page. It was kind of short and a little bit out of date. I have updated it to be quite a reference document for grinders, which is also a reference document in general for test jobs. I have the quick starts at the top, which we can fill out a little bit more. Eventually, I'll probably move this wiki page right into our docs zone, our doc directory. But for now, I've just put some reference to help people who are starting to work at the project, what access permissions they need. Some naming conventions that we use. So calling this a test group, calling this a top level target, test case, understanding how things kind of lay out, and then going exhaustively through the huge number of input parameters we have in our test jobs. So, and trying to group them by the groupings we have directly in Jenkins, so that if you never change the default test material, you'd never need to change any of these. But looking for any kind of feedback that people have once you take a look at that wiki page. I'll put the link in the minutes of the meeting. And then finally, I grabbed, we had an old pinned post in the Slack channel around grinder etiquette, what not to do at the project. I've just repurposed that as part of this documentation, but please feel free to update this as you see fit. So that was really all I was gonna mention, and I will come in with a lot more documentation updates over the next week. But just to note, I have started that. It relates to a very old issue that I had open to centralize our documentation, so which is assigned to me, but not in a Q1 timeframe at the moment, because I think it'll be multiple weeks of work. Anyone have anything else they wanted to add today, or to mention or give feedback on anything you saw? Such a quiet group. Well, if not, then I guess we'll close the call. Thanks, Joe. So I'll take the action to set up an issue to put more feedback, and also to point you at the script that we're working on for the audit piece, at least. And I think we'll call it a end of meeting if no one else has any other business. Great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
folks.
Yeah.